My name is Shreyes. Today I'm going to talk about the terrifying 13 Cuban Missile Crisis. First, I'll start with some background information. If the Cuban Missile Crisis was a fire, then what happened in 1961 was the firewood. So in 1961, the U.S. deployed nuclear missiles to Turkey. This made the USSR uneasy, as Turkey is so close to the USSR. Also in 1961, the U.S. invaded Cuba, but the invasion failed. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the leaders of the countries that participated were John F. Kennedy, U.S. President, Fidel A. Castro, Cuban dictator, Nikita Khrushchev, Soviet premier. Khrushchev sent Castro a deal. He said that he would put missiles in Cuba to protect Cuba from any further U.S. invasion. Castro agreed, and for Khrushchev there was a balance of the missiles in Turkey. Rumors started spreading, and the CIA decided to send U-2 flights over Cuba to see if there were any missiles. So on October 14th, U-2 swooped over Cuba, took pictures like these. They were sent to be analyzed by Arthur Lundahl, who found 3 different types of them. Together, they were capable of destroying major U.S. cities. Lundahl's team also understood that there were at least 3 missile sites in Cuba. The president was notified the next day, and he quickly gathered his group, his cabinet, called XCOM, and decided and tried to decide what to do. Robert McNamara came up with the idea of a naval blockade of Cuba. On October 18th, Kennedy met with Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko and Soviet Ambassador Dobrynin. They assured him that all Soviet armies in Cuba are only defensive. And Kennedy knew that there were missiles in Cuba. Kennedy knew that they were lying. Kennedy gave a speech to the public, publicizing his steps. He said that one day before, he had decided on McNamara's idea of a naval blockade. Kennedy signed the blockade proclamation on October 23rd, and people started protesting. Some saying, "Don't invade," and some saying, "Invade." The quarantine came into effect one day later, on the 24th. 19 Soviet ships entered near the quarantine line, and Khrushchev said that his ships would ignore the quarantine. But all but one of these ships turned back. Secretary of State Dean Ross said, "We were eyeball to eyeball," and I think the other fellow just missile versus no missiles controversy lingered on, most so in the UN. Adlai Stevenson debated with Valerian Zoré, saying, "I am prepared to wait for my answer until help is alone." He then showed the very YouTube photos that disproved Valerian Zoré. And one day later, Khrushchev came up with a deal. He said that he would remove his missiles from Cuba if the Americans promised not to invade Cuba. But Kennedy rejected it. And one day later, a U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba. The pilot was the only casualty of the Cuban Missile Crisis. But Kennedy was enraged. One day later, Khrushchev sent another deal saying that he would remove his missiles from Cuba if the Americans removed their missiles from Turkey. Kennedy agreed and secretly removed his missiles from Turkey, but the removal of missiles from Cuba was well publicized. Khrushchev said to his comrades, in order to save the world, he must. 1 year later, in 1963, the two capitals established a hotline called the Moscow-Washington Hotline, so the two leaders could communicate freely. But there were also disadvantages. Kennedy was assassinated, and Khrushchev was ousted. Leonid Brezhnev, who ousted him, said that he was too weak during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But the world was saved. Any questions?
I'm just wondering how you became interested in this topic.
Well, I just like history generally, and then I actually competed. I competed in the National History Day under this topic too. Any more questions?
Why did Cuba really not? Why wasn't Cuba lying on the second deal?
What?
Why on the second deal that Cuba would remove its missiles if they removed missiles from Turkey? Why was Cuba not lying or something?
It wasn't Cuba. It was the USSR. But Kennedy just trusted Khrushchev, and Kennedy knew because of this, Khrushchev did not want war, so he trusted the USSR. All right. Any more questions?
Do you know what the situation is like in Cuba today? Our relationship with Cuba?
What?
Do you know